himself with his handkerchief, and, managing a lively, "Well then," resumed the speech interrupted by the apricot water. The speech, as it was later determined, involved Jesus Christ. Apparently, the editor had commissioned the poet to write a long anti-religious poem for the next issue of the journal. Unfortunately, it completely failed to please the editor. Though Homeless had painted the protagonist, that is to say Jesus, in the darkest of colours, his Jesus turned out to be a very lifelike, if unattractive, character. Berlioz, however, wanted to show the poet that the crux of the matter lay not in Jesus' nature, good or bad, but in the fact that Jesus, as a person, had never existed in the first place. It should be noted that the editor was a well-read man who supported his argument very skillfully, with references to ancient historians. For instance, neither the famous Philo of Alexandria nor the brilliantly educated Josephus Flavius had mentioned so much as a word of Jesus' existence. "There isn't a single Eastern religion," Berlioz was saying, "that doesn't involve a virgin begetting a god. Failing to invent anything original, the Christians created their Jesus in an identical manner. Jesus, who never actually lived. That is precisely where the main emphasis should be." And just as Mikhail Alexandrovich ventured further and further into the sort of jungle where only a highly educated man can survive, the first man appeared in the alley. He wore an expensive grey suit, his grey beret was cocked brashly to one side, and a cane with a black handle shaped like a poodle's head was tucked under his arm. Looked to be 40-something, dark hair. His right eye was black, the left green for some reason. Dark eyebrows, one set higher than the other. In short, a foreigner. Passing the bench where the editor and the poet were sitting, the foreigner gave them a sidelong glance, stopped, and suddenly sat down on the neighbouring bench, mere steps away from the two companions. A German, thought Berlioz. Englishman, thought Homeless. The foreigner looked over the tall buildings, forming a square around the pond. It was clear that he was seeing the place for the first time. He rested his gaze on the upper floors, their windows reflecting a fragmented image of the blinding sun that would soon leave Mikhail Alexandrovich forever. The foreigner chuckled at something contemptuously, then placed his hands atop his cane and his chin atop his hands. "For example, Ivan," Berlioz was saying, "you have very nicely and satirically portrayed the birth of Jesus, Son of God. But instead of writing of the nativity, you must describe the awkward rumours surrounding this birth. Otherwise, according to your narrative, it turns out that he was actually born." At this point, the foreigner stood up suddenly and headed towards the writers. They looked at him with surprise. "Please forgive me for taking the liberty. Since we are not acquainted, but the subject of your learned discussion is so interesting that—" Here he removed his beret politely. "May I sit?" the foreigner inquired politely, and the companions somehow involuntarily moved apart. The foreigner sat nimbly between them and immediately joined the conversation. "Unless I am mistaken, you had been saying that Jesus never existed." "No, you are not mistaken," Berlioz replied. "Forgive my pestering, but, as I understand, you don't believe in God either." He put on a frightened look and added, "I swear I won't tell anyone." "Yes, we do not believe in God." "Oh, how charming!" cried the extraordinary foreigner. "But allow me to ask you, what would you do with the proofs of divine existence, of which, as it is known, there are exactly 5? "Alas!" Berlioz replied regretfully, "not a single proof is worth a damn, and mankind has long since consigned them to the archives. After all, you must agree that no proof of God's existence can be found in the realm of reason." "Bravo!" cried the foreigner. "Bravo! You have fully restated the thoughts of restless old Emmanuel on this matter. But here's the embarrassing part. He fully demolished all 5 proofs, and then, as if mocking himself, devised a 6th one of his own." can't.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.